Shalom, מה נשמע? It's Michael Mizrahi, התוכן. And you're listening to us בגובה.
אז בגובה, פרק 4. מה קורה אלקנה?
אהלן אייל, מה נשמע?
טוב, אתה נרגש?
כן, אני מתרגש, הולך להיות פרק מיוחד.
טוב, אנחנו הבטחנו לכם כבר חודש כמעט הפתעה מיוחדת, ואנחנו תכף נסיים לדבר בעברית, כי יש לנו אורחת מאוד מיוחדת, אז כל הפרק הזה יהיה באנגלית. So now we're moving to English, and Elkana, I will let you introduce our special guest.
Well, our special guest is a poker player. She is, I think, 32 years old. I checked her Wikipedia page earlier, but I don't remember anything. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Mlani Wייזנר.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
It is 32. That is correct.
Yeah,
Hi.
I also remember you were studying, the Wikipedia page said vocal performance.
Correct,
I
yes.
don't know what that means. I mean, you learn
Singing
yes,
with
you
a
learn
track
singing.
and musical theater. Yeah, that's what I was studying.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I think we'll let her sing in the end of the episode.
Oh, good. Great.
And you forgot to mention that she's a very, very nice person. You know, I told you how we got her to come to this podcast, right?
You got her. I don't know how to talk to girls.
Yeah, I just sent her. I heard she's coming to Israel to the variety tournament. She'll talk about it later. So I just sent her a Facebook message and asked her, "You want to come to an episode?" And I was like, "What are you doing? She won't come." And then she's like, "Yeah, I'll do it. No problem."
Yeah, that was pretty cool, actually.
So how is Israel so far?
It's great. I love it. I especially love Tel Aviv. Kind of always looking for an excuse to come. So when I was invited to the variety tournament here, it was an easy yes.
You want to talk about it? About the variety tournament? It was 2 days ago?
Sure, yeah. It was 2 days ago. I think it had about 300 people attending, and I've never been a part of a charity tournament this big. Actually, there may have been one that was that big, but not with a prize pool like this. Nothing this huge. It's very impressive. I was chatting with multiple people already about how a tournament like this is kind of unprecedented in the States, because you usually have a prize pool you're playing for, and that's what keeps it competitive. But everyone was still very competitive, despite there being no prize pool to play for.
We're Israeli.
It's all going to the charity.
We're all competitive, yeah.
Which was very impressive, and it was an amazing event. So I was happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you told me you busted like 20 times from this tournament.
I did. I had unlimited rebuys in this tournament as part of the pro situation. So I decided to take full advantage of that, and I was all in most hands trying to get a big stack, and I lost something like 20 hands in a row, something ridiculous. And then eventually I got a few double ups and started playing for real.
Okay, I'm still. By the way, we have 2 microphones for 3 people, so sometimes maybe one of us will talk a bit far from the microphone, and then the other one will slap him.
I'm sorry, I stopped listening after she said unlimited rebuy, and that's all I can think of. It's like, you know, the dreams about like marshmallow clouds and like sugar and stuff and rainbows, and my dream is that one with unlimited rebuy.
And
Nice.
shakshuka.
Yeah, and shakshuka.
You know what shakshuka is?
Yeah,
Have you tried?
I've had it in the States, and then I had it for real actually just a couple days ago.
No, you haven't had the real one.
Yeah.
No?
Elkana, every Saturday morning,
Friday, Saturday. Yeah.
he posts to Facebook a picture of his shakshuka.
Famous
shakshuka with like this catchy phrase, something like a very smart-ass sentence, and everybody's usually tell him...
How different can it be? It's just stewed tomato, egg, and spices.
Don't
yeah.
get me started.
Thank you.
Don't get me started.
So what besides shakshuka and unlimited ribeyes, what else have you seen in Israel? Where have you been so far this vacation?
So mostly just Tel Aviv. There's a lot of stuff going on for the Eurovision.
Yeah.
I went to the food festival tonight. It was crazy, like 100 stalls. I've been doing a project where I speak to businesses, corporations, and I discuss how to apply poker style strategy thinking, decision making to business. So I did a few talks for that while I'm here, and just like some general touring. We have friends. Nothing too crazy really besides that. Yeah,
it's great. If you'll see the, okay, let me rephrase it. God damn it. I'm so excited. She's here. I wanted to say that most Israeli poker players, not all of them, we have some good, but most of them are so bad. So if they will apply their poker skills in their own companies, our market will collapse.
Not their poker skills, my poker skills.
Yeah, I know.
That's better.
Yeah, so we
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so we have a pretty busy lineup, and we're gonna do everything. If it's gonna take us 4 hours, Melanie is not smiling anymore. So first of all, me and Elkanah, we will tell you about our latest run from the Israeli Poker Academy Spring Championship. We just we had like updates on the Telegram channel. And was this biggest event of the Israeli poker of the year.
What was the buy-in? And
it was 500 shekels.
550, I think.
550, and the first prize is a full package to WSOP main event.
Cool.
Like flights, accommodation,
right.
Buy-in, and everything.
Excellent.
Yeah. And
second prize is nothing?
No, second prize is, I think, a Crazy Eights package.
Cool.
And third prize is Millionaire Maker, and maybe the fourth is Colossus, and then just other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
700 entrants, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty big tournament, and we I never played, I played some big tournaments, some tournaments with 100 players in them, but that was a different one. It was like, because the usually these tournaments are you play for money, you play for like there's a prize pool. Also, this I wanted to say about the variety tournament. I'm sorry, my English is like, if I'm gonna go through the whole podcast without mispronounced words or something, it's gonna be a miracle. So yeah, but yes, we play for prizes. So we play like for a package to the WSOP, mainly for like a trip to Europe or like a plasma TV or something like that,
or a cell phone or Sony PlayStation. Yeah, I told you all the way.
So it was like I never seen a tournament like that. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was that's
enormous.
really impressive. Yeah,
and it was a very deep, and usually most of the Israeli tournaments are turbo. And they're not too deep, and this one was pretty deep. I think it was like 500 big blinds, right? It was like 50K stack and 100 blinds and
30-minute levels.
30-minute levels.
It's so funny that you say that's a slow structure.
Yeah,
it's not the main event.
That's a 30-minute level tournament is a standard turbo tournament.
I know, but this is Israel.
For Israel,
honey,
honey, very impressive.
Welcome to Israel, honey.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. Well, you're still deep, very deep to start. So
exactly, and
that's why I managed. I played the start, the first levels. That's why I managed to I could play. Yeah, I could play. I mean, I finished. We recorded the last episode after day one.
After his day one, before my day one.
Yeah, and I finished as chip leader.
He finished the day one. Overall, they had like 8 first flights, and he finished the overall chip leader of day one.
Yeah, so the listeners that aren't follow the Telegram channel still don't know what happened on day 2 and on day 3. And
there was no day 3 for you?
Yeah, there was no day 3. I mean, I came to day 2 feeling like, oh, come on, you are all my bitches. And that's gone.
And then he did Anton Morgenstern.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme in the podcast. We talk about Anton Morgenstern. At least once in an episode.
Yeah, about his meltdown. It was we talked about it on the first or second
That was
episode.
the ace jack thing versus the deuces.
Of
that whole
Mark Newhouse. Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, that was crazy. Honestly, like that, I think Newhouse's call in that hand is like not. That's a tough call as well. Like I would never think I'm good in his spot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember watching this, and of course I was watching it like 4 months after it actually occurred. But
yeah, I don't remember the exact action, but I do remember hearing the hand and being blown away.
Yeah, it was like ace deuce on the flop. And
yeah,
Morgenstern had ace jack, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I got into the money in this tournament. I finished 48. In this tournament.
This
yeah, in this one. No, in the main event I didn't finish 48, Mélanie. No. We'll talk about the main event in a few minutes. But I finished 48, and so I'm actually Bgova's best poker player for this time.
For this time, okay, I will crush that result.
Yeah, and I had a nice prize, and enough talking about us. Okay, so...
More about me.
More about you, but first we'll do something nice. Every episode, me and Elkana, we analyze poker hands from our amateur fishy perspective.
Great.
And,
your amateur fishy perspective.
And today, we've got you, which is less amateur and less fishy. And what do you want to go first, Mélanie? You want to go over your hand or my hand?
Let's go over your hand first.
Okay, so let me just get it in front of me. So it's actually from this tournament, from the Israeli Poker Academy Spring Championship. It was day 1D, and blinds were 200, 500 with 500 Andy. As I said, for us it's a deep and slow tournament, and the effective stack is 52k. And hero, which is me, I'm in under the gun +1, and I open to a 1300. It's for our Israeli audience. It's 1300. And villain, everybody falls.
What's your hand?
Yeah, my hand. I didn't write my hand, and Mélanie asked it also. It's a king queen offsuit.
Well, you could even analyze the hand from that perspective. What should your range be?
Yeah.
For the play you're making.
Yeah, is it a loose open from under the gun +1 to with king queen off?
I don't think it's that loose.
I don't think it's that loose.
I would need a special reason not to open that hand.
Yeah.
You could if there was just like tons and tons of 3 and 4 betting at your table, then I might not open that hand. But I don't think you typically want to be folding that hand.
Okay. So nice to
Especially
know.
deep, yeah.
See? First good word from Mélanie about my poker games. At the end, we'll sum up, and I'll have.
Well, you can just memorize a starting range. It's not like that impressive.
But my starting range is not yours.
Right.
So we have the villain, which is in the button, and he calls. And before I'll go to the flop, I'll just say that the button is a pretty solid player. And he didn't play many hands, but he's a bit tilted, and I've seen him already bluffing in the button like once or twice.
Why is he tilted?
Because he lost a big hand earlier. I think it was kings versus 8-9 suited, and he lost pretty major of his stack.
What was this, all in pre-flop?
No, I think he had to fold on the turn, but he was pretty tilted.
How do you know he had pocket kings?
Because he showed. He just exposed his hand.
All right.
Yeah, they like to do it here.
Okay.
It's like, look, I folded kings, you bastard. Look.
Okay.
No, folding kings, actually, in Israel, folding kings happen once every year, I think.
All right.
So, stop me.
You think this means that he's tilted?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were like sitting for like, I think it was level 4 or 5, so we were like sitting for like 2 hours or something in the table, so I could watch him and how
you saw him bluffing?
Yeah.
What was the hand you saw him bluffing on?
I don't remember, Mélanie.
Well, this is important because the way in which people bluff can tell you a lot about what they might do in other sorts of hands, you know? So if I saw a guy, like something in this hand that might make me call down is if I saw him float really wide and then try to do something to take the pot later, then I might be more interested in.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
Useful to know.
Do you write these comments, Elkanah? Because it's going to be useful on future hands. So the flop comes King Jack 7 Rainbow, which I believe it's a pretty good board for me.
It's decent, yeah.
Yeah. So I bet 1,500, and he pretty snap calls, just calls, doesn't think about it.
So before Mlani analyze this flop action, I want to ask why. I mean, I could check this flop out of position. I think with King Queen offsuit on this flop, I don't know if I'm going for value on this flop because I block other kings that will call me. And usually he's not gonna have a lot of other good kings. I mean, you're getting called by King 10 or King 9, and he doesn't have that many kings in his range.
Okay.
And if he's gonna call you with a jack, he's gonna call you with a jack in later streets. That's my way of thinking. I am already going to catch bluff with this hand.
Okay. Are you agreeing on this?
I would prefer a good reason to do that. Like, I don't really want to just bluff catch with this hand unless I think checking will allow my opponent to stab more often than he should. Like, if I check here and I think my opponent will start attacking the pot with pocket eights or ace 10 or stuff like that, then that's fine. But I'd rather get a call from some of like the ace 10, ace queen, queen 10, queen 9, jack X.
10,
and I also like, yes, you block a king, but every time you're trying to get a outkicked pair to call you, you're always blocking it. So you can't.
Yeah.
You also do want to get value from a king. But
there aren't, because of the jack. I mean, that's why it's. I mean, there aren't many kings that gonna call. I mean, in his pre-flop range, you think he's calling pre-flop with King 8 or King 7?
No,
well,
I think the king
7.
you want to get value from the most is all the King 10 suited combinations. I don't know if your opponent calls King 9. Did you think he would?
Yeah, he's
okay.
He's an Israeli
player.
So
you have King 9, King 10. If you have King Jack, you're gonna find he's gonna find out about it. But the reason for me to check the flop would be if I assume my opponent will always bet ace 10, ace queen, queen 10, queen 9, 9 8, 10 8. If he will bet all those, because if he doesn't, then I lose a street of value from those hands that will call me. So that's the concern, really. If he's tilted, maybe he will. Maybe he'll just start firing at the pot. But also, when you check call this flop, I feel like your hand becomes pretty face up as like ace jack or like a weakish king. Because if you had ace 10, ace queen, queen 10, queen, I imagine you'd just be betting this flop. So I'd rather bet the flop. My range remains wider, and I still get value from a lot of hands. So that's why I would err towards betting the flop. Now, if you're in a different kind of situation where there's some ICM implications and maybe you don't want to have to get raised on this flop and fold your hand, or you're near the bubble or something like that, I maybe would start leaning towards playing it more passively, but it wouldn't be my standard thing. Also, like, if versus anybody on a day one tournament, I think I'm just going for value rather than trying to like pot control with my top pairs.
So write it down. You're wrong and I'm right. Okay.
There's never any one right way to play a poker hand, but that's...
I know.
But I think you get more good things that happen for you when you bet the flop.
Okay, great. So the turn is 10 of spades, and it opens a flush draw on the board now. So I, of course, check. If it's not that obvious, so tell me. But I check, and villain bets 3,500,
which is around half pot, I think.
Yeah, I didn't write it down, but I think it's half pot around it. Didn't write the sum of the chips so far.
Well, you've got 5,600 in the pot plus the blinds and annies, so we've got 6,600, 6,800 in the pot. Yeah,
it's a bit more than a half a pot.
Yeah.
And okay, before I say what I did, it's an obvious call, right?
Yeah, I think you have too much equity in this hand to fold. The interesting decision is the decision to check, and I think the typical decision is to check. This is a card that improves your opponent's range a lot, and you're not beating a lot that now bets this turn, but you still have to call anyway, since you have outs to make the nuts, you have outs to counterfeit your opponent if he's outdrawn you on the turn, and I think it's worth one more bet. That being said, you don't make a lot of money when you do hit the nuts.
Because I'm out of position.
Yeah, and even if you were to lead, like you just don't see people bluffing on 4 Broadway boards very much. So if he's mostly just going to bet a queen if he's chopping with you and check back if he's not. So you don't really have any implied odds, but you probably get enough direct odds to call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to say something, Elkana?
No, that's what was my thinking.
Liar.
I would also say though that you can bet this turn depending on who your opponent is. If your opponent is the kind of person that will keep calling, if you have reason to believe your opponent has more weak kings in their range, maybe he does have king 8, maybe he'll call another barrel with king 9 but not bet it himself. Same thing with like queen jack. You can get one more street of value for sure from queen jack and ace jack and jack 9 here. So there is an argument for betting the turn, but it's very thin.
Yeah, I think if the board on the flop was like king 8-7 or I don't know, it was a dry board. It's not that wet board, but when like king 7 deuce or something, and I would bet the flop, maybe I would feel more comfortable to bet the turn, because then maybe I put more kings in his range if he called the flop on that board.
I'm just saying that when you check here, you allow some hands to check back that would have called a bet that you are beating, specifically ace jack, queen jack, jack 9, and king 9. Those are the hands you lose value from, but the 10 completes queen 9, ace queen, king 10, jack 10. It's probably like pretty close.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how many of like to tilt the scale. If they have a few more weak kings, if maybe they're just really fishy and they call here, they will call another bet with 10-9 or queen 10 or something that they really shouldn't be calling 2 streets with, then maybe it could be a bet. But I think the typical play is to check and call.
Okay. So
the problem is when you do check call, if you're against a good player, your hand is very face up, because you'd be firing a second barrel with any real value hand here. So you open yourself up to getting bluffed. Like if you check this turn, a really good player can just overbet the turn, overbet the river, and put you in the bin, as they say.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough spot, but that's poker.
Yeah.
So the river, it's the 7 of spade. So it completes a flush board on the board, and I decide to check, and villain bets 6,400, which is
again half pot.
Again half pot. It looks very value-ish, and I'm in a very, very hard spot. And now you two will tell me if I can ever call here, if I'm good on anything, and then I'll say what I did.
It's not that hard decision, in my opinion. I think it's a fold. Maybe you think a bit 30 seconds. I don't know. You said you went in a tank. I don't know. I think this is a fold because first of all, you're on the bottom of your range. I mean, you never had a weaker hand in that situation. So I think, he could
have like queen 10 or maybe ace 10, ace jack.
The only weak
queen jack. He could play those that way.
I can think of the only weak hand is queens.
He could play queens that way. Sure.
Yeah, and I don't know, and even to that hand, I mean, he is. I don't think he calls on the flop with like backdoor flush draw, unless the king was the the king of
He
spades
could
was
call.
on the
He
board.
could call ace queen of spades, or he could call
Yeah, but
maybe if the king was not a spade, he could call
with
king X of
and
spades,
king X of spades, yeah, he will call. But the
or
thing
ace
is,
jack of spades if that's not a spade.
and that's possible. But
Queen
I
jack
don't
of
think
spades,
this
that's
for
not a
this
spade.
amount for this amount on the river that he bets. I don't think he's only represent like flush. He can represent ace queen, or queen 9, or king 10, jack 10. Pocket 7, of course, pocket jacks.
Yeah. It's hard to find, if you want to make this call, it's really hard to find his bluffs. He's got a lot of value. I don't know what he decides to bluff with. Like, I don't know if on day one of a tournament like this, I'm ready to give credit to someone for turning ace jack into a bluff here, for turning queen jack into a bluff. Like, it's really hard to find him. Like, okay, maybe he turns queen jack into a bluff and tries to get you off like ace king or king queen. That could be reasonable, but you also have a queen in your hand, so there's that. Jack 10 beats you. I doubt Jack 10 bets the river. They don't go for thin value on the river. They just check back.
I think he beats Jack 10.
That's what I mean. The other guy's not trying to go to value cut it himself with Jack 10 because he loses to a king, so he's just not going to bet it. So it's really hard. It's really hard to find his bluffs. And if I'm in a situation where my opponent's range is really value heavy and I am really struggling to find bluffs, then it becomes an easy fold. So then the next question would be, I don't think you're good on this river almost ever. So the next question would be, is there any other way for you to win this pot? And if you do have something like the king of spades or the queen of spades in your hand, you could consider check raising the river and try to move him off of king 10, ace queen, queen 9, those hands. Obviously, you get called by the boats, but the boats are really only jacks and 10s. Unless for some unless you're really screwed and he just happened to slow play kings pre-flop, which is unlikely, I think.
Yeah.
So
he could also have 7s. Combo.
He could have 7s, yeah. So his hands are 7s, 10s, and jacks. And you can move him off of, theoretically, you could move him off of king jack, you could move him off of king 10, you could move him off of ace queen, and maybe you could even move him off of flush. You never know. So the question then becomes, do you ever play your value hands this way? So sometimes that doesn't matter, right? Because sometimes you're against an opponent that's not thinking that deeply and is just like, well, he might have a boat, I'm going to fold my flush. Well, he could have a flush easily, I'm going to fold my straight. And they don't really think of how likely it is that you would play your hands that way, because I think if you had, like, let's say you had like ace 5 of spades, I just think you would barrel this turn most often.
Yeah,
you do want to mix some checks in with hands like that to protect, like what I said was your obvious capped range on the turn. So theoretically, you would want to mix in a few of those hands so that you can have some strong hands by the river, including pocket kings, pocket jacks. But I just don't think people do that enough. And also, you just want to get value. If you've got pocket kings or pocket jacks, you need to get value on this turn that brings a lot of hands equity. So it's very rare you would play your boats this way, and it's really hard to think of a flush that you would play this way. Like, your only real flush that you might play this way is like king 9 of spades if you opened that hand. I guess you could play king queen of spades that way. Like, there's just a couple of combos. So if the king is a spade on this hand, you're really not gonna, it's not credible to me. But like I said, sometimes people are not quite on the level where they're thinking about, is this the most probable way you would play those super strong hands? So it's an option. You can always think about doing that. And if the king is not a spade, you could represent that. It's way better if you have that king of spades or the queen of spades in your hand. Then I'd start thinking about it. But my default would be to fold.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say to Elkanah, this is how real players analyze hands.
I knew you'd go there. I knew you'd go there.
Yeah, I'm like sitting here and I'm like, I have no clue on poker. I mean, I'm such an amateur, a fish when she talks next to us.
Well,
so
on the river, are you thinking, what are his bluffs?
I know.
Can I find his bluffs?
Okay,
you know?
so now let me...
Because that's the real key of the hand.
So I went into the tank for like more than I should have, like 4 or 5 minutes. And
wow.
I was at some point I stopped thinking about what he has, and because I tried to find bluffs, and I said, okay, I don't see any bluffs here unless he's a complete moron. This is what I thought to myself, and I didn't know that he's a complete moron, but for some reason I looked for live tells, and as I said earlier, he was tilted, and after he made the bet on the turn and on the river, he just stared at me for like, oh, there are people here and we can hear them through the microphone. So he just kept staring at me for like ever. All my thinking time, he was like looking at me like this. So
he's staring straight at me.
Yeah.
For those of you who can't see.
So I thought, first of all, I was feeling really uncomfortable and it clouded my judgment. And second of all, this is when I just said to myself, fuck it. He looks like bluffing. I know he has no bluffs, and I just called. I wasn't thinking. I was just like, okay, he's keeps staring at me. I can't think. He looks like he's bluffing. I call. And then just threw his hand to the muck, and I took down the pot.
Wow.
And at break, he said that he had pocket fives, and he turned them into a bluff on the river, in the turn on the river.
Okay, well, before you said that, I actually wanted to say that sometimes your analysis is completely irrelevant because of the X factor in poker, and people just show up with ridiculous things sometimes, and they just decide like in a very Rounders style, like this hand, this time, and no theory whatsoever. So every once in a while you do see something like that, but you really don't want to make decisions hoping that that's the case.
Yeah,
like you want to have your range analysis be the thing, but
you want to have your range analysis be the thing.
Yeah.
So it is amazing when this kind of thing happens, but it will happen in the other spots too, where you have the appropriate section of your range to call, and they'll show you that hand and be like, how on earth did they have that hand? But most of the time I would not be ready. Wrong. Yeah. But good for you that you made the live read. Yeah. I mean, that's a thing in poker too. That's important to qualify. I would probably be looking more to those live reads if I had a little bit better of a hand. Like if I had something like aces, I'd be a lot more interested. I mean, I'd probably call with aces.
Yeah. But bottom of your range.
Yeah, probably aces. Ace king, maybe I could see starting to look for this kind of thing. It's not that much different, but yeah, good for you.
Yeah, thanks. I know.
And also, like, you probably know the poker audience here better than I do. Maybe in these types of tournaments, people just make moves too often, and they're more willing to do this.
Our Israeli players make moves that after you analyze them, you ask yourself, what the hell did he just do?
I don't know. I never saw that kind of... No one... Everyone's so tight in Israel. They just wait for the aces and play them and never bluff in Israel. I don't know what you're talking about.
So if those are really prevalent factors, then you can start to adjust the range you want to call with and have it be wider. But against the player described, solid player, didn't play many hands. You thought he was a bit tilted. You've seen him bluffing, but like...
It's not a good enough reason to call. I just couldn't think. He was staring at me and I was like out of judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
totally.
that's one of those classic strong when weak things, like the intimidating, animalistic, like in your face kind of thing.
Like when they prepare their chips, when you prepare your chips to bet and they prepare their chips to call. And I always analyze this as weakness. Is like he wanted to show me that he's going to call anyway because he doesn't want me to bet.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I'm super happy you won the hand. I probably would have lost it.
Thanks.
That's great.
Yeah. So,
but don't make a habit of it.
No.
You got away with it this time.
Yeah. Okay. So
what would you have done if he bet like 12K on the river?
I probably fold. Yeah. If it was a polarized bet, I would probably fold. Yeah, because I never get enough odds to call. Not that I get enough odds to call the 6,400 call, but it's too much if it was 12,000.
All right, so if the villain is listening to this podcast, work on your sizing with your no equity bluffs next time.
Yeah, exactly.
He played it really bad, so he doesn't...
Or just don't do it and do it always against me.
It's a really ambitious float on this flop. I'm not that impressed.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on to your hand. And your hand came on
much more legitimate.
Yeah, and it was a slight better tournament. It was day one of the main event.
Yeah.
And okay, I'll just read it as you sent it to me. The blinds were 250 and 500s, and you have 75K. and Annette, and you just wrote Annette. It's funny. And then I asked her, is it Annette Oberstad? And she said,
Who
yeah.
Who else? What other Annette is there?
Yeah, but it was like, you see, we're talking about the regular Israeli funny, and she writes Annette.
No, I just thought, I want to be on that table. I mean, with Mlani and Annette Oberstad, why am I not sitting there?
Because you don't have 10K and you didn't want this tournament, the spring championship. This is why. So Annette has around 45K and she opens, it's under the gun, to 1,025. The small blind calls and you call with 9-8 off. And now let's talk about the flop. The flop comes Jack 10 for rainbow with one heart. It checks around and okay. So is there something to say about the flop?
I'll just give you guys some history. So Annette and I had already gotten into several pots and I had just sort of gotten the better of her in the few times before. There was actually one hand where I had the nuts and she. I think I had something like ace 3 of diamonds and it came like a 5 deuce 4 flop with 2 diamonds and I think I check called the flop or she check called the flop and check raised the turn and then I just shoved because I just wanted to make sure I got value from a set. She ended up folding. Something like that. I don't remember what it was. But at this point in the time, she didn't know that I had that hand. We were on the secondary feature table, but there wasn't streaming of our cards.
Okay.
So, or there wasn't whole cards shown.
Yeah.
There was streaming of our cards, but not whole cards shown. And aside from her, the rest of the table was really soft. But she is an excellent player, and she was on my direct left, so it wasn't like the easiest table in the world. But we had gotten into a few confrontations, and I had the upper hand most of the time.
Okay.
But she wasn't doing anything crazy. She wasn't tilting. She was just playing well, I thought. So her open under the gun is, I don't think at a primarily fishy table where she has direct position on her one real competitor. I think I might have been missing somebody. There might have been one other pro at the table. I don't really remember, but I remember thinking the table was pretty soft overall.
Okay.
So I think her under the gun range is strong. I think I think it probably includes. I'm not sure if it includes all pairs, but probably most pairs. Maybe ace 10 plus, jack 10 suited plus. I don't know really how wide she goes, but decent. She has a small sizing, which I think is fine for under the gun. I think I would tend to make it a little more, no matter what. But I think a small sizing is okay under the gun just because her range is so strong. Small blind called, who had been... I don't remember too much about him. He was one of these players that I think wanted you to think that he was capable of making moves and like talk a big game about making moves, but whenever he really put all the money into the pot, he had it.
Okay.
That's what I remember about him. And I remember raising him on it was like a jack 7-3 board, and I raised his c-bet with king queen, and he folded pocket eights and showed me. I just remember that about him, and he was just one of those players that's like, if you steal my blind again, like this time, like I'm gonna get you. But you shouldn't adjust to that kind of player until they force you to adjust, not because they're warning you that you're gonna have to adjust. So he wasn't really that much of a concern. I didn't think he was gonna make any crazy moves, and he ended up being irrelevant to the hand. But I assume he has a good hand at least. I assume he has like king queen plus, sixes plus, and I think he'd be 3-betting.
Yeah.
Queens plus.
Obviously,
ace,
he didn't
king.
have king queen here on this
no,
board.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think he just showed no interest. So I don't really know what he had. I think it could have easily just been like a small pair.
Okay, so the turn was the queen of hearts. So you got bottom straight.
Yes, this gives me the third nuts, and I wanted to lead. I don't think check raising this turn is that great, because I never really have ace king. I guess I could once in a blue moon overcall with ace king suited, but typically I would just squeeze with ace king, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't really.
And you probably don't have jacks or tens here. Also, right?
No, I think it's a disaster if I do have jacks and tens and I let it check around twice.
Yeah.
So I think most of my strong hands are going to be leading the turn, and And because most of my strong hands lead the turn, I also want to lead the turn with any bluffs, any hearts, anything like 10-9. I don't have too many bluffs really on this board. Like most bluffs would be hearts. So I wouldn't have much of a check raising range on this turn. I would just be leading my strong hands, trying to get value. Don't want to let it check around and give people free equity. And this definitely qualifies as a strong hand.
Yeah.
So plus a lot of her check back range will be calling this turn. A lot of her check back range is stuff like ace 10, queen 10, maybe even like queen jack could check behind. I'm not really sure. She can turn two pair, like I said. But my range is stronger than hers. I have fours, I have tens, I have jacks. She doesn't have any of those hands. The only hand she can really have is ace king that is beating me.
I wrote some stuff here, but let's see if we'll get to it. And she, after you bet to 2,000, she makes it 6.5.
Yeah, so, and then the other guy folded. He had just shown no interest in the hand. So I'm just in like a really shitty spot right away on this turn because she has all of the ace king. Like I have a range advantage in terms of numbers of hands that I can have on this turn. Numbers of strong hands. I can have tens, fours, jacks, queens. I'd probably 3-bet queens pre-flop, but I can have jacks, tens, fours, and straights and two pairs, and her only super strong hands can be queen 10 and ace king, and I don't even think queen 10 would raise my...
She wouldn't check back. She never checks back sets.
No. We're
Jacks,
really
tens.
deep, and she's three-way. She's just betting jacks and tens and fours on the flop. So my range has more value hands in it, but her range has the nuts and mine doesn't. So that's why this is a really tough hand. And once she raises the turn, she basically is only repping the nuts. But she gets to do that because she has every combination of ace king in her range, and she assumes that I have none. So I'm just being put in a super tough spot on the turn, and almost nothing is going to change my decision on the river.
You can't fold on the turn, definitely. Can you find a fold?
Honestly, I was considering folding the turn, but I think she can have a few bluffs, and those bluffs are hearts.
Yeah,
maybe like ace x of hearts. She could even have some worse hearts that have like no showdown value. So she could have something like 8-7 of hearts, maybe. 9-7 of hearts, maybe. I don't know if she opens that under the gun. So she can have some hearts, and because of that, I decided I was willing to call the turn, and I would fold on a heart river. And but you can make the argument for folding the turn because it's really hard to assume she's going to just give up on the river after she takes this line. It's almost impossible that she doesn't just bomb the river. So it's a really shitty situation.
Yeah.
And she has the advantage. She does have all the ace king. I have none of them, or almost none of them, and she would play ace king this way. Maybe some listeners might be asking, well, if she has the nuts, why wouldn't she just call the turn and hope that the small blind also calls? But the small blind has shown no interest in the pot twice now. It's checked around on the flop, and he decided not to lead the turn. So he doesn't have a lot of hands that are going to call there. So it is really just a heads up pot. So I think she should do exactly what she's doing with ace king, and that's why it becomes such a tough decision because I'm just basically in this hand hoping that she doesn't have ace king.
Yeah.
And that's not really a situation you want to be in, just hoping your opponent has the hand. But my hand is just too good. I think if I'm folding straights on this turn, then I'm just folding a little bit too much. I'm not sure where I want to draw that line. Like I probably also want to call two pair and stuff on this turn, but maybe the added equity of that helps that decision, and maybe I just want to fold the rest aside from that. And her bluffs, she has some bluffs though. So if she has a hand like ace 10, that might be a good bluff. If she has ace of hearts in her hand, or even maybe like just ace of hearts with the 10, or I don't know, ace of hearts with the 9, any two hearts, ace or otherwise, probably a decent play because she can then make her hand or rep the nuts and get me to fold by the river. Sometimes I have hearts and I'm leading the turn, and if the river's not a heart, then she can just win. Yeah. So she has some options to win, and there are some bluffs, but I'm still just in the bin. I am in the bin.
Yeah, and you obviously you called.
Yeah. I did call.
And the river was a blank. It was
the biggest blank that there is.
It was
yeah.
two
Deuce on the river changed nothing, Lon. Changed nothing.
Yeah.
That was my Norman Chad impression.
And of course, it's like you see the deuce on the river and you know exactly what is going to happen. And you check.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know exactly what's going to happen because what if she bets like 30K on the river? You know,
She bets 50. By the way, she bets 15K.
Yeah, she bet 15, which is still like big, but
it's like 90% of the pot or something like that.
Oh no! So we had the pot was like 13 on the turn and 3ish on the flop, so it's 16, and then. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. You're right.
It's like it's 16 on the river, and she bet like 15. It's like 90% of the pot.
It's still really big. But if she overbet, then I'm in an even worse spot because I have to be right way more often. And some players would overbet this river. They'd go for like between 20 and 30 and just basically just say fuck you with their bet. Yeah. Like that's what that bet is, right? Yeah. I guess she assumed that I had a calling range and a folding range, and she wanted to bluff. Oh, I just gave it away. She wanted to bet. She wanted to bet the most efficiently. So if she is bluffing and she thinks I'm gonna fold 2 pair and worse for the 15 and just call everything else, there's no real reason for her to bet more unless she thinks I'm gonna hero fold more hands. So I like her size, but it would have been harder for me to call, I think, versus 30. But I don't think she necessarily has to risk that all. Anyway, I did end up calling. I just felt that I was too high in my range to fold. I beat a lot of her bluffs. I got the river that I wanted, and I tanked a lot on the turn before calling because I sort of had to decide on that plan. Yeah. Not to say that I don't ever change my mind depending on something that might happen, but here I had sort of made up my mind on the turn, so I ended up calling, and she showed ace 10 of spades, which I thought was a really well played bluff by her.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that I was too high.
Look, Elkanah, I analysis the hand, which nothing like Mלאני did, but what did I write on the last line? I said, tough call, but I don't think I can fold. Call.
You never fold. That's the thing. You just call with top pair, which I told you this is the worst range you're going.
Well, in this case, your top pair call would have been good as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You
king queen off. You should call this flop.
But just to look at it from her perspective, look how strong her play is. If the hand I have to call is a straight, if I'm folding everything else, her play is really, really strong. It's really credible, and that's what you want.
And she did the turn raise. She did it with almost no equity to improve. I mean, she didn't have the hearts.
Right. No, she's looking for. I mean, her only winning hand is a king, but she blocks. She blocks the nuts. She blocks hands like ace queen, and she with a 10 in her hand. She also blocks the sets of 10s. So I think she just assumes.
You don't think you squeeze with 10s from the big blind?
I think no. In the main event versus a small blind flat, I don't think so. I don't think there's a lot of value in that.
Also, I wrote
depends
some
on the
notes,
people.
Yeah, I wrote some notes about this, and I mean, I can't think what Annette Oberstad's play is, but are you sure, 100% she would bet? She would check the flop with a set.
I am 100% sure she would not check the flop with the set.
I mean, you think
but that's not why she's making this play. She's making this play because I don't think she's trying to rep a set. I think she knows that I have the sets and she doesn't. When she checks the flop, she knows she doesn't rep the sets. There's no reason for her to give a free card. If it was Jack 6 deuce, maybe she'll check behind jacks.
Oh, okay.
But I think when this hits a lot of our flatting range, she wants to get value from all straight draws, all top pairs, all middle pairs. There's no reason for her to check behind with jacks or 10s. So I don't think she does this because she believes it's credible that she has sets. I think she does this because she blocks some of my strong hands. It's not because she reps them herself, but just makes it less likely. And it's credible for her to have the nuts. So she would play the nuts this exact same way. So kind of why not?
Yeah, you can't see, but we're just looking. Oh my God, this is poker.
It's pretty crazy, but it just goes to show you how these when you do bluff and someone's range is capped, right? So my range is capped at a really strong hand, but still capped, right? So I can never have the nuts. And when you make these bluffs where you have hands that are blocking the nuts, have hands that are blocking other strong hands, and are extremely credible because this is exactly how you would play this hand, and it's very likely that you have this hand, you put everyone else in these really shit spots. And that's why she's such a good player, because she recognizes it and she's willing to execute. And I think she was just unlucky that I happened to have 9-8, because I probably would have folded almost everything else. I'm probably calling King 9 9-8 and probably folding almost everything else. I don't know what I want to do with a set. She could also have 9-8, right? She could have 9-8 suited.
Yeah.
And she knows that I don't have ace king, and so she's only losing to king 9, so she might go ahead and do this for value. So her worst hand might be 9-8. She doesn't open with king 9.
Would she play this way against a weak player? Probably not. I believe probably not, right? She would probably...
It's hard to say because versus a weak player, she might just go ahead and bet ace king on the flop. Because she assumes she has more ways to win the hand. However, 3-way, it might not be so good versus a small blind flatting range, so she might not do it anyway. But the weaker the player is, the more profitable your bet with ace king on this flop would be. I also think it would depend, her turn play would depend on what she thinks of her opponent. Like if she's watched her opponent and her opponent has shown like they only care about the cards in their hand. Did they match the board? They don't care what you're doing. They're just calling if they have a decent hand and they're folding it down. They're not talking themselves into a fold because you rep ace king.
This is what I was talking about, because against a weak player, she wouldn't do all this leveling in her head. And she wouldn't think, okay, what he thinks that I have and what he thinks that I think he has.
Yeah, it's not a crazy amount of leveling. It's just understanding what she represents with her range and where I am in mine. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a leveling war, but you just can't always represent those hands. This is actually something I was talking about in my talk, that these people will execute these elaborate bluffs and they'll be like, I played so perfect and there's no way this guy could have called, and can you believe this? He called me with this. Well, it's not because this guy's playing wrong. It's because you're playing wrong, expecting this guy to be able to read your bluff and knowing what your opponent is able to perceive is half of this. So maybe she wouldn't against a different kind of opponent, but that kind of opponent would have just had to prove that he is really sticky. He's calling down with whatever. He doesn't care what you're representing. And versus that kind of player, you can just exploit them really hard in other ways. You can just bet much thinner for value. You can just value bet all your hands for more. So you don't need to do this against that kind of player. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool hand though, right?
Yeah. Very cool hand. Yeah. Well, which main event was it?
I think it was well played all around. This was main event last year. Yeah, day one.
Okay, so if we're talking about main event, we're going to do like WSOP preparation, a quick WSOP preparation with Melanie. You're probably going to be there, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you want to tell us what tournaments are you going to play? What are you going to do? What is your plan for this summer in Vegas?
So, I don't have the most concrete plan. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, I am going to go to Wimbledon this year.
Oh, the tennis championship.
Yeah, it's been on my mom's bucket list for ages, and each year I tell her, like, I can't. It's the WSOP. But this year it will coincide at, like, if I bust the main event enough early, I'll make it. But I don't think I'm gonna skip it. So it'll be like, well, if I make a deep run, I'll have to miss part of it or whatever. So I will be doing that. And that's gonna be a heavy amount of travel, so I might just keep it a little lighter before then. Also, I find that in all the previous years where I've kind of camped out in Vegas for the whole summer, I get really burned out really quickly. So I kind of want to take breaks here and there as I see fit. I'll definitely come for like the first maybe 10 days, and then the next stint of 10 days where I don't know which tournaments it is, maybe Millionaire Maker and 888 tournament. There's another like chunk. There's a couple of chunks where
I know
that look really attractive. So I'll definitely be there for those, and I'm just not sure what's going to happen kind of in the middle.
I imagine Melanie's mom calling her in the middle of the main event. just shove your stack and come to London now.
Yeah, my mom is great with tournaments. She's a big anti-sweater, not for me, but for my opponents. So anytime I'm eliminated from a tournament, she will rail the tournament, rooting for that person to lose that took my chips. And she'd be like, "That should have been you. This asshole, like this. Finally, he lost." And she's really good for that.
So she doesn't like Alex Keating at all.
Well, Alex Keating didn't take my chips.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I just.
But she did rail. She railed that guy who took all my chips with the 5-3, and then she like gave me the updates of what he busted with or something. I'm like, "Thanks, Mom. Doesn't matter." Yeah. That.
No, I wanted to ask you again about the that you come with like. Usually I see poker players just like planning their summer, planning the Vegas trip. Like they have a schedule for each day, which tournament, which buying, how many bullets they're gonna put, and you're just like counting. I might play this one. I might play this one. I might play this one.
I'm probably gonna sit down maybe like a week before and try to make something like that out. But I also think that in these tournaments, you want to be kind of careful about overcommitting yourself. I like to be very particular with my mindset and make sure that I really want to play each event that I'm going to play. So I try to just check in with myself a lot. Do you really want to do this today? Are you like, is this? So I will give myself that flexibility. I do make a schedule, but I'm not going to play an event that day if I'm not feeling it, because it's kind of just lighting money on fire. Like, you feel obligated. You're like, okay, this is the best time of the year. It's the best money making opportunity, but you don't want to be putting yourself in a suboptimal mental state to do it. So
exactly, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, I never come to like if I had gone to Europe to my WSOP is like 5 days at Rosvadov or something like that.
Yeah.
And
the King's Casino.
Yeah, so if I never come with any plan, any schedule, I mean, I'm coming to play poker. If I want to play poker, I will play poker. If I don't want, I will just stay in my room. Just whatever happens. I don't know.
I think it is good for most people to have a really set structure. I just think at the and you therefore commit yourself to a plan, a bankroll, that whole thing. I just think that for the summer, because there is multiple tournaments every day, that if you do commit yourself to that kind of schedule, you can get burned out very quickly, and then you feel obligated to play something crazy. So. I do think that it.
Where is Melanie? I'm trying to picture
here.
it. Yeah, there she is. Sorry, I stopped you in the middle. Cheers.
So I think for most people, a schedule and a pretty set structure can be important, especially if you're operating under a limited bankroll or a special bankroll for the series.
Well, I have no bankroll. Just I come to the casino. I just spend all my money and leave. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Do you sell part of your action?
I do, yes.
You want to offer to our listeners? Maybe they want to buy in.
Sure. They could just message me on Twitter if they want any. I usually sell it to a specific friend or two.
Yeah.
But sure, yeah. If anyone wants.
So if you want to buy in for Melanie's action, just Twitter. But
I'll definitely play the highest value events and the main event and some satellites, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I love it when that the main event is not among the most valued event. I mean, it is the most valuable event, and it's the most special event. I mean, really, it's 10K. It's 10K to get in, and like you have 6,000 players who doesn't cash.
Probably like 8. Oh, that doesn't cash. Yeah.
So that's it's part
amazing.
Of the most valued.
It is. It's an amazing tournament, and it's really special. And everyone that plays that tournament can feel that it's special. It's very electrifying, and the atmosphere is
you don't
incomparable.
See it, but I'm drooling.
And you can you can satellite in, because they have tons and tons of mega satellites running for $500, $1,000, whatever, and they're huge and they pay out hundreds of seats. So
small money.
So you could try. And they do it on the WSOP.com. They have a 25-seat or 50-seat guarantee for $250.
Yeah, you forgot this is Israel. We don't have online poker here.
Well, if you go to Vegas, then you can play
Yeah.
on the WSOP.com.
So if some of our listeners go to Vegas and they're like first-timers on WSOP or first-timers on the main event, they like amateurs, what special tips can you give them?
I think that a lot of people get very caught up in feeling like they need to do something different in the main event. And that is true because it is a different event. It's a 2-hour structure. It's a really deep structure. So it's not that you don't want to pay attention to that, but people get so caught up doing it, they start playing a game that's just not theirs. And then they feel like uncomfortable, or they feel like they're getting run over, or they feel like they don't know what to do, or they feel like they're playing too tight. And it's a million things can happen like that, and that just runs them into the ground, and they end up feeling really unhappy with the way they played their game. So don't be in a situation where you feel like your game is not enough, because firstly, when you enter at that point, when you enter the tournament, there's not too much you can do now to improve your game. You have a week before or whatever. It's not like you can drastically change your entire game. I mean, I work with when I coach my students and we prep for the WSOP, we start working several months in advance, at the very least, to do something like that. So the week before or the day before, when you sit down with your chips, is not the time to change your game plan. That's the time to, I think maybe like during a week before the WSOP, I would sit down. I wouldn't play poker like right before either. Like, you don't want to be playing a cash session all night the day before it, get stuck $500 and be tilted going into the main event. So take a day off and relax. But I think maybe check in with yourself and honestly ask, well, if you have time in advance, if you do have a few months in advance, then you can ask yourself, what are my weaknesses? What do I want to work on? Do I want to get coached? Do I want to read a book? Do it, whatever. And then you can actually put some thought into how you want to improve your game. But at the time, you can also just check in with yourself and be like, what are the strengths in my game? What do I want to focus on? The things that you feel that you are good at in the game. And how can I pay attention to that while understanding this is a deep tournament, this is a special tournament. I don't want to just dust off all my chips in the beginning level, but I want to focus on my strengths. Maybe it's reading people. Maybe it's playing small pots. Like whatever you think you are good at, don't just discount all of that because this is a new and crazy and big and scary event. Like, it's still a game of cards. Everyone's playing the same as you. Trust yourself to evaluate what's going on and play your game and what you feel you're good at. And if you feel like you have some weaknesses, like then just be honest with yourself, identify them, and try to stay away from those areas. If you feel like you're not really sure what to be doing with middle pairs, maybe you think you overplay them, maybe you think whatever, then just err on the side of being more conservative with them and try to make big hands before you go crazy. And don't.
Melanie says just fold.
Well, the truth is, in the main event, you have an incredible structure, so you can play tight. But it's a tournament, so you want to accumulate chips. You can just be more selective with the spots. So you're not forced into making a lot of moves necessarily early because the blinds are going to eat you up. That's just not going to happen. You can play like the first day like a cash game. But I like to go into these tournaments, and every tournament really, just kind of sitting down without necessarily any specific game plan. I don't sit down and I think, okay, today I'm going to bluff everybody at the table, or today I'm not going to run any bluffs. I don't think anything like that. I don't sit down and say, I'm going to play tight aggressive. I'm going to play loose aggressive. I just sit down at the table and I pay attention to what everyone else is doing, and I try to see what warrants adjustment in what ways. And so that means that every year I play differently, completely differently. Some years I'll be playing extremely loose, tons of my hands, raising them a lot. Some days, some events I'll be playing way more passive, way more trappy, and anything in between. Whatever is warranted by the table. I never try to pressure myself into playing in a style or a way that I'm uncomfortable with because I think I'm supposed to. And that's where I think people get into a lot of trouble, putting this kind of pressure on themselves, and then they end up playing in a way that they don't usually play, and then they regret it. So if you get crushed playing your game to the best of your ability, then all's fair. You know, that good game, that's how it goes. But if you get crushed because you think you're supposed to be doing something that you're not doing, and then you get involved in these hands where you have no idea what's going on, and you feel like you're playing someone else's game, then that's not the feeling you want to leave with the main event. So I would say play your game, trust yourself, take some time before the event to try to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are, get some feedback from someone else if you can about that, if you don't feel you can be good in that sort of critical fashion, and just go in and compete, like really compete, because that's the fun. That's the fun of it. Is that a good answer?
That was an amazing answer. I think I'm going to hear it in repeat every poker tournament I play. Elkanah is speechless.
Actually, yeah, I am. All I can think of is Vegas and the fucking Mirage, you know. so yeah, it's about it. I mean, every time someone mentioned the main event, and when Melanie talks about it with like,
I get goosebumps.
No, it's not. The main event, no, it's not like goosebumps. It's just like she talks about it. And she played it since when was your first time?
I think my first one was 2009. Wow, so this will be my 10-year anniversary.
Oh my god.
Amazing.
You see, so
who won it? It was Peter Eastgate. Who won 2009?
2009, yeah.
I think
it was Joe Kada.
It was Kada in 09?
Peter Eastgate?
Maybe Peter Eastgate was 08.
So Kada. Joe Kada was 09.
Who is still a huge beast, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've seen him in this year's
crazy
final table. Oh my god. that was
yeah,
very,
I see
very nice.
You wrote here on the lineup, you wrote tips on how to run good in the main event.
Yeah, Melanie she made a joke about it before we started recording. I think she just gave us tips on how to try and run good in the main event.
Just pick up pocket aces. Let's see if you can try do that, and just keep on going from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of pressure in the tournament already, and you don't need to put additional pressure on yourself.
Do you get when you? Obviously, you play poker for a living, so you're not as excited of when you sit in a poker table as us. But when you sit in the Amazon room,
definitely,
are you get excited?
For sure, and I still get excited when I'm in a big pot. Like my heart starts beating and all that. So it's definitely all still there. It's just heightened because of the main event and the possibility to win such life-changing money on this stage.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the money. I mean, when I'm thinking main event, I'm not talking about the 8 million on the top. No, I'm talking about the main event.
Yeah,
cameras, ESPN.
Yeah.
Lon McCarran, Norman Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had more experience over the years being on TV and stuff. But when I was in my first televised event, which was Poker After Dark, I was extremely nervous. I played terribly.
I remember that one.
And I just like was. It was a mess. But now, after I've been on TV like a lot over the past 10 years and played so many main events, it feels a lot more comfortable, and that's part of the edge for sure.
Yeah. That's. You want to go to the Facebook activity, or you want to? Do you have any more questions about?
No, I have a lot of more questions.
Me too. But yeah, I you told me not to look at the time, but. We don't want it to be 2 hours episode, 2 hour episode.
No, so I have.
Don't we?
If you want, we can ask you questions all day long.
I mean, I think our listeners will be a little bit more forgiving if we'll stretch it a little bit more. So I have some questions I want to ask. Yeah. Like some of them are like serious, legit question. Like, what's the highest buy-in event you ever played? Or
highest buy-in event? I mean, the highest buy-in event I ever played was actually that first Poker After Dark. It was a $50,000. Sit and go. So that's probably also part of the reason I was so nervous. Yeah. And that remains the biggest.
I remember like Dwan and
it was Dwan,
Chris Ferguson,
Annette,
I think.
No, it was like the online Young Guns versus Doyle. So it was Dwan, Annette, Andrew Lichtenberger.
Oh yeah.
And me, and Doyle, and Eric Baldwin. That was the lineup.
Okay. It's a nice table.
I'm not willing to pay $50,000 to play with these. just to sit at the table, that's way above my line.
But you did started in online poker, right?
Yeah.
Your career.
Yeah.
When was it? Was it 2000 and what? 6, 7, 5?
Well, I have been playing professionally for about 12 years, so 2007-ish is when I was like pro, but I probably started in 2005. Yeah.
Oh, the poker boom.
Yeah, the poker boom for sure. And I was playing low stakes. So I was playing $5, $10, $3. The 11 rebuy on Poker Stars was the one I always wanted to win. I would like look at that tournament and be like, wow, $15,000 for first. I'm going to win that tournament someday.
How many players?
And then I won
usually?
it 3 times. Outright. Yeah, I won the 11 rebuy on Poker Stars 3 times. So one of them was when I was a sophomore in college and I had just moved into the dorm with my new roommate. And she's like, oh, like, tell me about yourself. And I was like, oh, I play online poker. In fact, I'm going to play a tournament right now. She's like thinking I'm crazy. Like, what's going on? This girl, she plays poker and she proceeds to win me. She proceeds to watch me in that very night win like $14,000 winning that tournament. And she was just out of her mind. She was losing it. So it was a really fun night that one night.
In the same way, that day on, she always looked at her like, oh my God, this is the crazy girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Who just won $1,000 in one night.
Yeah. So but the biggest one actually does remain the Poker After Dark from 2010. That was a huge buy-in.
So another question I wanted to ask you is not that much about yourself, but you probably get a lot of like questions about women in poker and
all the time. Yeah.
Well, it's like why aren't there so many women? But you belong to other like I forgot the word, like miut.
I forgot the word either.
You have a blackout.
Minority.
Yes,
that's
you belong to another minority. Why do you think there are no such many redheads in poker? It's a serious question.
Redheads are a low distribution of the population in general, so it naturally means there will be fewer.
Yeah, you're like an
in
extinct.
poker.
You're like in extinction danger.
Great question, though.
Yeah,
I mean, there should be more redheads in poker.
Should be more redheads, and there should be more women. But I don't think it's likely to ever approach parity. I think even if the female presence improves in poker, for various truthfully biological reasons, I think that it won't be parity. I think there are many social factors that could influence women getting in poker, but I don't think it would ever be 50-50.
So I found out today, actually, speaking of female in poker, you are the only one to win 2 EPT ladies events.
That's true. I am. And that was back in the day, but it was very cool at the time.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, suck on that, Phil Hellmuth. I mean, you'd never go this far.
No, I mean they're small EPT events. The one of my wins was a bigger one that I think was one of the biggest ladies events in the Monte Carlo Grand Final. So it was a bigger buy-in and a bigger pool. But typically they're smaller events, and smaller events are easier to win. That's why the high roller circuit with the same 20-30 players, there are people with so many titles. So it is easier to win for sure than a main event. But it's also cool.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking, okay, you're a well-known poker player, but I guess that sometimes when you get to sit at a table when there are people who doesn't know you, okay, or it doesn't happen
sometimes
anymore.
Yes.
And I'm still wondering, because I see it a lot, that when a woman sits in a poker table, some men just look at her as like a prey, like, okay, she's a woman, I'm gonna bluff her off every hand, and she's weak and stuff. Does it still happen, or do you see doesn't see it anymore?
It's rare, but it still happens occasionally. It just depends. It's not always the same thing every time. Like it's rare, but people when it does happen, people tend to just over adjust one way or the other. They assume, oh, I'm a pro, I gotta out-bluff them or out-maneuver them and they play recklessly and too aggressively. Or she's a girl, when she bets it, that means she has it. I'm gonna just fold really too tight to her. So it's just a question of identifying to which direction they will be overcompensating. But that... It's also, these people are overcompensating due to other reasons than besides me being a female. So everyone's always a little like doing something wrong in one of those directions. So it's just another sort of evaluation, I guess. It doesn't happen that often, and I don't think I'm run over that much. Really, I don't get the feeling like people are just trying to bluff me all the time because I'm a girl. And if I get that feeling, then I'll just try to call down more. So it doesn't really present me so much of a problem as just another piece of the puzzle. How does this person view me, and how will that affect their deviation versus my play? Okay,
it's nice to hear. Here in Israel, I can say that I see it all the time.
But here in Israel, the girl poker players, the girls are way weaker. What can I do?
But that's your job, to stereotype the players at your table. So it's not what you want to do socially when you are meeting someone or judging someone's character, but at the poker table, your job is to analyze your opponents and stereotype them and utilize as little the little information that you have to make the decisions that you can. So I would also typically view an unknown female player as generally weak, but I would view most unknown players as weak. And female players fall into that stereotype because biologically they are not as aggressive as men. Men are more risk tolerant, men are more aggressive, men have more
It's funny you say that after you met Annette Oberstein.
And again, this is not every woman, but the typical way that they err, and I view myself as an example for that. When I first started in poker, I was too passive, I was too tight, I wanted to make the nuts before I bet my hand, like all of that stuff. So it's not for every woman, but more than the average amateur woman would err to that side. And for men, it can kind of go either way. Sometimes people are too reckless, it's easy to spot, and sometimes people are too tight, it takes a little longer, but I think it's your job to use those stereotypes. And obviously once someone does something to give you a better indicator of how they play, you can adjust that stereotype, but I think you kind of have to do that at first.
Okay.
You have any more questions?
No, I think I got it.
I have so many, but
I mostly wanted to ask the redhead question. So that's behind me.
And we need to leave some taste for her next visit because she's here like every 2 years or something, and she'll come.
I actually might be back in August, so I'll let you know.
Okay, so you'll come to tell us about how was your Vegas trip.
Yeah,
if you come.
It can't go worse than last year. So.
Okay. So. We actually made a Facebook activity around your arrival to this episode. We didn't tell our viewers that you're coming, but we did. We posted. We made a post on Facebook. We asked our listeners to tell us which celebrity. No, doesn't matter if it's fictional or a real person they want to play with in poker, and they should explain why, and we give away a prize. Elkanah, we have a sponsorship, so you want to read
this week, this episode prize is sponsored by the winner of this contest. This activity will win entry to the Pedro Poker Tour. I will do this in Hebrew if you don't mind, okay?
Go for it.
Because
בטח.
Okay.
אין בעיה.
See, I got the permission.
Now, afterwards, we'll see if you know how to curse in Hebrew.
So, הזוכה בתחרות הזאת תזכה בכניסה לטורניר של פדרו פוקר טור, בטורנירים מכל הארץ, טורניר פאבים למי שרוצה, חפשו אותם בפייסבוק. הם, באמת יש להם גם טורניר ברומניה, אירוע בבוקרסט ברומניה ביוני, ב-12 ביוני, אם אני לא טועה. אז חפשו אותם בפייסבוק, אחלה טורנירים, אחלה אנשים, ואולי נתראה בבוקרסט.
אמת, הלוואי כולנו. And now we're going to just read some of the funny, and our listeners were so original in their comments. They were so funny. And last time we did it, we actually picked the winner before, but now we decided, no, Melanie's going to help us pick the winner, and we're going to read some of the very funny comments, and we'll translate them to English.
I was just thinking about who I would want to play with.
Who?
I'm not really sure, but my mind is very on Game of Thrones right now. So
we have some questions we have some comments regarding Game of Thrones.
Yeah, we had.
They would be tough to play against, I think.
But the thing is, I think there are like 20% of the answers were Game of Thrones related.
Yeah.
And I don't watch Game of Thrones, and I still understood the references.
Boo!
I just said I'm still understand the references. I can hold a conversation about Game of Thrones.
But we don't want you to be able to hold a conversation about Game of Thrones. We want you to watch Game of Thrones.
We want you in the same boat with us.
She looked at me like, if you don't
Burning
watch,
in Blackwater Bay.
Yeah.
Mlani just looked at me. If you don't watch, I will burn you.
Yeah. So who would you want to play with?
I don't know. I was just thinking it would be cool. It would be cool to play with Melisandre. I don't know. I think it would be
because the night is dark and full of bad beats.
I don't know. turns the card into flames. I don't know.
So a lot of them went to like wordplay jokes, which is great by me, but you don't want to.
Yeah, you want to read some, and I read some. You read one, and I'll do one.
Kfir Cohen, one of my favorite one. He play also Game of Thrones. He said he want to play with Varys. Because he doesn't have the nuts.
It's funny.
That's good.
It's funny, yeah. And another one, Tomerman said that he's got to play with the Teddy KGB and he'll bring an Oreo box, Oreo chocolate box, and right before they begin, he will pull it out and he will put it on the table and said, "Are you hungry, Teddy?"
Cute. Very cute.
Yeah.
Ize Hamoud.
Tomer, Melanie Wieisner just said you're cute.
So, Tal Luria said, I have to play with Doctor Strange. Maybe 1 out of 14 million times I will win.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
I saw that movie.
Yeah. I did. My wife is a Marvel fan, like a fanatic fan of Marvel. Isn't fan is a short of fanatic?
I think it actually is
so
short for fanatic.
I just a fanatic fan. Yeah. So Eliasaf Duel just said he wants to play with William and Harry because in Hebrew it sounds better because Jacks always lose. Because it's a prince.
Right.
They're both princes.
Yeah.
Prince.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cute.
Hebrew sounds better, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds better in Hebrew.
The one joke that Hebrew gets the upper hand.
Yeah.
So Adi Gross wants to play against Martin Luther King and holding ace high and just saying, "What you got, Martin Luther King?"
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read one that made me laugh so hard. Do you know something about soccer? No?
Something.
Yeah. So there is a famous goalkeeper, which his name is Buffon, he's Italian, and his name is Gianluigi, and his nickname is Gigi. So he said he want to play with Buffon, so in the end of the game he can say, Gigi. I was peeing my pants.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was very hilarious.
So another one is by Eli Ashkenazi. He said he wants to play with Pablo Escobar and take win a big part off of him and say, okay, I'm out. Just okay, yeah, that's it for me. I just won that's it.
He wants to hit and run Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Dudi Avram said he wants to play with Jon Snow because he knows nothing.
Well, a couple of good.
Yeah, we'll just do a couple more and then we'll decide.
Do you have a favorite?
I have.
You have one. Okay.
Okay, so we'll do two last ones. It was Sharon Shraga who said he wants to play with Stevie Wonder, and if he will raise, he will just sing him. I just called to say.
Cute!
Yeah. And last one?
Last one. So,
we'll find it. Yeah, we'll find it in a minute. It's okay. Which one?
Where was it?
Okay, we'll find it.
No, I think that's the only one. Okay.
Okay, so I actually have a favorite. What's yours?
I think my favorite is the Varus because he doesn't
mine
have the
too.
nuts.
Yeah.
Close. The GG one is really funny.
Yeah, the GG was my favorite, but it's 2 against 1.
I think the Varus
The
has
Varus
to win.
one.
It's so good.
Kfir Cohen, which is also a very good player. I know him personally.
Oh, forget
so
him then.
Yeah, you can just text us on Facebook, and we will be in touch.
Yeah, we will just deliver you the entrance to the tournament.
And we managed to talk about Game of Thrones without dropping any spoilers. So
Yeah, it's it's the last episode of the series this Sunday.
I have no idea. No, I know.
But did you watch it while you were
I
here?
did. I went to a viewing party here. Yeah, it was really fun.
It's so cool. It's
Yeah.
like they had cheering every time something good happened.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then, like, when Cersei walked down the stairs.
Yeah, and don't
you know,
spoil.
I won't spoil,
yeah.
but we all laughed.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, what?
Okay, we just spoiled it.
No, it doesn't give away anything.
Yeah, I know. So now, before we wrap it up, and I don't want to wrap it up because it was so fun, but my wife will probably ask why I'm not still at home because the kids drive her crazy probably. So we'll just do like a few. I wrote some quick and funny questions. It's like you need to answer fast, and then you need to understand. You need to explain why you answer this way.
Okay.
So first of all, okay, we'll start pretty light, and then we'll go to some more nice things. Favorite poker hand? Don't say aces. Say something.
I think my favorite poker hand is Ace King of Clubs. I really like that hand. I love clubs. The pros call them puppy feet. Do you guys know what I'm referencing?
No.
So there's this amazing series that I watched way back in the day. It's called Secret System. It's a parody and the guy is Bill Philmath, and he parodies Phil Hellmuth, and he shows like some videos, and he's always going on rants. It's hilarious at the time. So I always loved clubs because of his little joke about puppy feet, and I really enjoy playing Ace King. I like a lot of hands. Like I enjoy getting dealt aces the most, but of course I think Ace King suited is a beautiful hand to receive.
Okay, that's nice. I wanted to ask you of clubs, diamonds, hearts, or spades, but you just answer. Toughest opponent you ever played?
Toughest opponent I ever played. Well, at the time, I had a really tough time with a guy who's a really good friend of mine now. His name is Dan DiPasquale, and he played online by the name of Carry Hero, and I was playing him in Heads Up Sit and Goes, and he would always just hand my ass to me on a platter. And eventually I made friends with him so that he would stop sitting me. So he was very tough. And also another...
Very, very valuable friendship.
Yeah. Also another guy, on the online name of Sixth Sense, kind of a legend. Always sort of had my number. I played with him live in several EPT events, Heads Up and WSOP Heads Up, the 10K, and he was just one of those people that, whether it's through hand distribution, maybe they are really a genius, like you never really know, but they just get you every time. They always call you when you're bluffing. They never call your value bets. Like every time you get it all in, like they have you. It was just, this was the kind of guy. He always had my number. Yeah. They were very, very tough for me to play against. In tournaments, it's a little bit different because you so rarely sit with the same people. But these were people I was playing Heads Up with all the time. So I was very accustomed to having to play many, many hands with them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Favorite casino?
Favorite casino? Like casino or place I've played poker?
Favorite poker room. Okay, well I'll adjust. It's a poker podcast, not a blackjack podcast.
Well, my favorite place I ever played was in Prague for the EPT, and Monte Carlo for the EPT. Those were my two favorites, but they're not. Like the casino, and you're not really playing in the casino in Monte Carlo. The casino in Monte Carlo is really like an old, separate kind of thing. And in Prague, it's also separate from. You're playing in like a ballroom, you know. In Vegas, my favorite casino is the Aria.
Okay.
So that's like the real casino, Aria. Yeah.
I remember Aria. I've been to Vegas once. I remember Aria and the Venetian. Those were my two favorites.
Yeah, Aria's my favorite. easy favorite.
If you want to ask some questions.
it's your questions.
Okay,
I had no idea this part
that's a
is
funny one. Yeah, I wrote them. That's a funny one. How many times players, male or female, try to hit on you at the table?
Total number of times?
Every time.
Yeah, estimation. Does it happen every time?
Well, let's see. I've played live poker for 10 years, I guess. And maybe I'm playing poker like half of the days of the year or something. So let's just say I play poker like 100 days a year live. So that's 1,000 days I've played poker. I've probably been hit on at least once every day. So at least 1,000 times, I guess. It probably evens out. Maybe there's a day that I didn't get hit on, but the other day I got hit on twice. So, yeah.
Amazing.
And also, this is like interpretation, right? Maybe I think someone's hitting on me and they're not. It's possible.
Yeah, in poker you can interpret.
Yeah.
Or maybe maybe it's more. Maybe someone hit it on you and you didn't notice.
There's a lot of flirtatious banter always at the table. I like to, it doesn't bother me. I like to engage and sort of challenge a little bit. So I think once people realize I'm open in this kind of way, they then push the envelope a little more. So maybe I'm encouraging it myself. It's definitely not all pleasant or desired, but for the most part, I think in poker you have to have a very thick skin, so it's not really beneficial to let anybody's comments bother you. So I just roll with it most of the time.
Okay. Funniest thing ever happened in the poker table?
The funniest thing that ever happened.
Yeah, something you remember it was hilarious. Oh, it's a tough question.
I don't know. What's the funniest thing?
She just turned to Jonathan, her boyfriend, who sits here, and he has no idea
the funniest thing that ever happened at a Oh my God! Oh no! I know for sure what the funniest thing is.
Okay, this is gonna be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so main event it was I don't remember which year, either 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. It was day 3 or day 4 of the main event, and this girl was at my table. I had never seen her before. She was like dressed really cute, early 20s, and she was playing like a maniac, just ridiculous. And also she like did not give a shit about the game. She ordered bottle service to the table. Like a guy brought a cart with a rolling cart with a bottle of vodka and the whole thing to the poker room at the she was just, I think she was a girl that had been just gambling all over Vegas and stumbled into the main event somehow and was just like treating it like a game of blackjack. Yeah. That was what was happening. Anyway, so she's like very tired at the table. She was like drinking a lot, and then she was really tired, and she was asking like cocktails, and no one was coming, and she was like cocktails, and she gets into this hand where she bluffs it all off, and what happened was someone, it was like a 3-way pot, and someone had called her down on 3 streets. It was like 7 deuce jack ace with a missed flush draw, and she had open pre-flop at the flop at the turn and all in on the river. She covered the guy, and the guy immediately called pocket 7, so he had flopped a boat, and she tried to muck her hand, and someone else at the table had said like, dealer, she has to turn her hand, it's all in, blah blah blah, and the dealer called the floor. He said floor, and we're having this whole discussion. The floor comes over, and before he talks to the floor, we had all agreed that like she has to turn over hand. So the floor is coming over. He turns the hand, king, queen of diamonds, puts in the muck, and the floor comes over and said yes. And the dealer goes, cocktails. It was amazing. The whole table burst out laughing. This dealer was such a boss. It was so
amazing.
Funny.
Praise this dealer. I heart this dealer.
I never had this was just the most amazing
Everybody
thing.
tipped him very well this evening.
It was so good.
Oh.
I just laughed about that for days. And it was in like a very serious tournament.
It wasn't
really
like something low buy-in. It was like
no, this was like in the money of the main event, or like right before the money of the main event, and
if I
it was
would
so
do
hilarious.
that, I was a dealer, and I think if I were to do that, I mean, the player would and I just said cocktail about him. I think he would slap me or something like that.
Probably hit you or something.
There was also another second hilarious hand was an old woman who was playing this $3,000 event at the WSOP and just like bluffing every hand, just going nuts, just crazy old woman at the table, and she was like bad mouthing everyone, and she kept correcting people and telling them they were dumb, and she was just hilarious. And the dealer said something like, watch out for the 9 seat. She's a fireball. And she's like, I'm in the 10 seat. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, the 10 seat. And she's like, that's okay. You went to public school. Like this 95-year-old woman is talking shit to the dealer. I just thought it was so funny. Anyway, the first one's the best.
Elkanah is erasing questions from my... Okay. I'm willing to let those two go.
This question go, yeah. Two questions.
Table talk or golden silence?
If
Have
you are
watched
confident
her on the main event?
If you are confident in your ability to either get information or get someone else to do what you want, go for it. Otherwise, I mean, if the action's on you, you might as well. You might as well try to get some information. But be careful, because sometimes people are better at perceiving it than you are at manipulating them. So it depends.
You're asking the wrong person. I mean,
I like to talk.
yeah.
But I've also been burned. I've been super burned by talking. So one time a guy talked me into folding and showed me a bluff. Like, I mean, it definitely doesn't always work out.
Yeah, nothing works always.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I know she likes to talk, but I want to know. I want to know what's
I think most players are better off not talking to give information away, and then talking if they're the person with the decision.
Okay, I just added another one in my head. I'll try to remember it. Okay, spoiler alert. Who will sit on the Iron Throne?
I don't know, and I thought it was so funny when they were doing these odds of what's going on. I mean, it has to be Jon Snow, right? But that's so boring.
Yeah.
This is so boring. I mean,
I'm so enjoying this conversation.
I would much have preferred if it was someone unexpected, like Jaime, or if it did end up being Daenerys. Maybe I think I would like Tyrion to be on it.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if it would be Tyrion, or if there would be no throne at all, like Daenerys will just... She will understand that they won't let her sit on the throne and just burn it all up.
Well, I thought it would have been really cool. Well, this will be a spoiler, but I thought it would have been really cool if Cersei escaped and she's now living in exile somewhere far away with this baby that is, considered by some to be the rightful heir, and like the story is starting all over again. I thought that would have been cool.
I just lost the conversation, and I have no idea if you did spoiler it, but
no, we will put spoiler alert on the post of on the Facebook post of the episode. DC Comics or Marvel?
I'm not a huge comic person, but my
Booze!
I know, but my primary exposure has been to Marvel, and those are the movies that I've seen. So I guess Marvel.
I have a Batman T-shirt here, but my wife is, as I said, she's a Marvel fan, and hard to say, because Batman,
The Dark Knight was one of the best movies. That was incredible.
Heath Ledger in the best performance ever,
and that's not really. I haven't seen anything even close to as good in the Marvel movies. So
me too. Yay! Except Elkanah looks like Thor. Sometimes.
A bit,
right?
Yeah.
I just said nachon. Now we opened up. Mלאני now we're speaking Hebrew. Tel Aviv or LA?
For what?
I didn't ask for what. I just want you to answer. Tel Aviv or LA?
Go with LA.
LA. Yeah. I mean, for visiting, probably Tel Aviv, but for living, LA, I think.
We just talked
They're both wonderful.
Yeah, when I picked her up, so she said, "Oh, the traffic is awful." And then I asked her, "What traffic is worse, Tel Aviv or LA?" And then she said, before I even finished the sentence, I was like, "It's LA. LA is much worse."
Yeah, LA has terrible traffic, but LA has much better sushi. So
yeah.
Point.
I guess
well
I've never been to LA, but I ate sushi in New York, and it was much better than here. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh.
Oh.
I'm going to go with a very unpopular secret third answer, Stargate.
SG1 or Atlantis?
The original.
SG1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife would love meeting.
Prepare to another 2 hours of podcast.
Yeah, no. Stargate SG1 is my wife would love meeting Mlani. It's her favorite TV show. I don't know why, but okay. This is the one funny one. Will Kassouf or Alex Keating?
I'd probably prefer to have Will Kassouf at my table. I think he's probably got to be careful how you talk about other players. I think I would have an easier time against him at the table.
Okay.
I don't have to be careful about poker players, so I just say, Will Kassouf, she called you a fish.
I had another one and I already forgot. This will be also embarrassing. Brad Owen or Andrew Neeme?
What?
Oh my god! Oh my god! She doesn't watch poker vlogs. Okay.
I know who Andrew Neeme is, but I can't like think of either of them by their faces.
No, it's funny. Brad Owen and Andrew, they are friends, and
Andrew
they both
Neeme
have.
is like he's living in Vegas and is
think they
like
both live in
40
Vegas.
or something.
It's
40s.
two poker vloggers just.
Yeah.
No, but it's funny because Andrew Neeme.
Can I go with Marley Cordero?
I don't know her.
You guys got to watch her blogs. It's so funny.
She's cool.
She had her first one is she's like, I'm looking for a poker playing boyfriend because all I do is go to the casino and my apartment. So looking for a poker player boyfriend, and she's like showing the room. She's like, fucked him. Dated him for 2 days. Like, I've slept with everyone in this poker room. And she does the whole like really funny satire of this female stereotype in poker, and it's hilarious. She's very, very funny. It's
Marley, just Marley.
Marlee Cordero.
Okay, Marley Cordero.
Yeah, she has a great blog.
So
I will send you.
Vlog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Very
have any
funny.
other funny
She's very
question?
sarcastic.
No, I want to ask one thing. Like, you were a famous poker player before 2016, but you got like a recognition worldwide by the main event. Like, but no, I want to ask how does it feel to be famous because you were 127th at something.
It's interesting to hear that characterization because I thought that sort of the height of my career was long before that. Because
I thought so. I mean, I saw you before 2016, and like I watched the EPT and stuff.
I think I was.
But it's so funny. I mean, because
maybe people think the same as you. So maybe that actually is the point of like the highest exposure. But I always thought in terms of notoriety, I had higher exposure before that. Like when Poker After Dark was regularly being aired, and like all the poker TV in America and all that, and it kind of all died down. But it is funny, and you know, I've achieved a decent amount of notoriety in poker without any major tournament victories. Like most people who are well known in poker, they won this bracelet or they won this EPT, and I'm this person that has like just come close more than anyone. So it's funny because the accolades, I guess, have come from, or the recognition has come from these deep runs without the titles. So on one hand, it's kind of annoying, and on the other hand, it's kind of cool that it's not just like one major hit, and I've accumulated all my earnings from like constantly doing well in events, and I think for some people who do just have that like one giant score, that's a lot of self-doubt, like, well, what if I didn't have this, then would anyone care about me at all, kind of thing. So I've done a lot throughout my career, and the 127th thing is just really irritating because I did so much in that tournament to give myself a shot, including my bust out hand. For those of you who don't know, I lost to a guy who 3-bet 5-3 and then sort of was forced to call my all in. And that was just really irritating to lose that.
I need to watch it again. I remember it, but I need to watch it again.
Hand,
I remember your hand with the Swedish guy you lost to.
Per Linda.
Per Linda. remember
Honestly, that hand, truthfully, I think I should have folded that hand, and I've given that hand a lot of thought, and I think that was a bad call. Most people watch that hand and they think, well, like, it's a cooler, she had to call, blah, blah, blah. But I think there were some clues in that hand for me that I could have made the fold. If I was just like a little sharper that day, and it was the first hand of the day, and so I think I was still like a little calming down my nerves, and so. But it is kind of funny to, like they're like, what did you win? What did you? Well, I took 10th place in this tournament and 2nd place and this 127th in the main event. So it is kind of funny.
2016 was a fun year of the main event.
Yeah,
there was a lot of characters, a lot of faces you remember.
Yeah.
You have another, because I have one final question.
One final question for Eyal. Come on.
When do you think you'll stop playing poker professionally? Do you think you're gonna do it until you're 78 years old, or you tell yourself, no, I won't do it forever?
I think poker as your primary source of income is really hard. I think, and it's only getting harder as the years go on. So I would like for that not to be my primary source of income eventually. And I've worked through, especially like in recent years, on building out other aspects of my business, like coaching and corporate work, so that there is some balance there. And I don't think I would ever not play the main event, for example, or play at a high competitive level. But I think it's very emotionally draining. It's very, I'm sure the levels of cortisol in my blood, I don't know what the Hebrew equivalent for this is, but I'm sure they're sky high. And it's just like a lot. It's a lot to weather. And I've toned down the travel and try to prioritize like mental state and life balance and all this stuff. So I think I have already been sort of transitioning to that for a while, but I think I've got a decent amount of time to perhaps the rest of my life to play at a high competitive level. It just won't be the only thing that I am that is my income and profession. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Maybe I'll win the main event this year and then just retire.
Yeah, that will be a very good solution. So, okay, so we'll wrap it up. So, thank you very, very much for coming. And
my pleasure.
It's been a blast.
It's been a blast. It will probably our best episode forever. Never mind who.
Well, we can always record one of these another time, even if I'm not here. So
yeah,
we can always do it online.
Yeah, we would. And if you're here in August, so we'll do a recap of the WSOP.
Cool.
Elkanah, final words.
Just that it was great with it, even that the fact that we got Mלאני to be here. It's amazing, and just we're taking it to the next level.
Yeah. Next one is President Trump. Just kidding. Special thanks to BPM College for this studio, for Pedro Poker for our sponsorship, and for you guys, our listeners. So until next time, I guess we'll say bye.
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 Bye.